It's no secret Social Security is facing a significant challenge. If changes aren't made, projections show there will only be enough receipts to pay 80% of projected benefits as soon as 2034. This would mean a pay cut for millions of retirees. 2024 is an election year, and it's going to be a hot topic as we head to November. We'll share some potential fixes next. Hello, welcome back to Wealth Wednesday. I'm your host, Neil Watson, a certified financial planner here in Marietta. If you'd like to learn more about our show and catch up on past episodes, you can do so at our YouTube channel, that is at Commonwealth Financial, and you can check us out on the web, that is cfswv.com. According to most projections, Social Security is going to face a significant problem in 2034. It's at that point that receipts from payroll taxes of working Americans will not be able to pay the benefits for retired Americans. The projected shortfall is estimated to be 20%. Let's welcome in Parkersburg Financial Advisor Vince McManus to discuss this. I know it's a topic that you love to discuss. What has caused this problem?
Sure, Neil. I wish I could narrow it down to just one thing, but a good example would be to just think about a company-sponsored pension fund. So in that universe, which is a little bit more closed, the company knows who the participants are. That allows them to be able to estimate what the projected benefits are going to be, and do they have the funding required to maintain those benefits? So, and also the company wouldn't legally have access to those funds and those plans, or they're very, strictly like parsed out away from their general account, so to speak. But Social Security is not a private pension fund. It is a government-sponsored program, and I think it's important to realize it is a social insurance program that does provide other things besides the monthly benefit that we all kind of think about when we pejoratively use the term Social Security. But the government doesn't automatically build a reserve fund for those future benefits. Basically, they've spent the excess contribution in the program on other things, and there are some demographic issues longer term that have changed from when some of the assumptions when the program initially started back in the Depression. But that's what some of the problems are, and some of the breakpoints of why we're having this issue and this funding problem going forward right now.
Right. And the last major changes that happened to Social Security were back in 1983 under President Ronald Reagan. And some of those significant changes were that they increased the normal full retirement age to 67 over a gradual portion. So if you were born in 1960 or later, your full retirement age for Social Security purposes is now 67 years old. They made a portion of the Social Security benefits taxable as well. So up to 50% or up to 85% of your benefits are taxable depending on your other income. It also added an automatic cost of living increase to your benefits. And the last thing they did was it increased the tax rate for workers to the current 6.2% level that it is today. And keep in mind that level, that tax is paid by both the employer and the employee. So it's a total of about 12.4%. Now, this was passed with bipartisan support and essentially kicked the can down the road to where we are now, facing a significant problem if something isn't done fairly soon. Vince, this isn't a new problem. We didn't wake up yesterday and go, oh my, this system's in trouble. You can find articles that are more than 10 years old pointing to future difficulties. And how we got here isn't as important as what we can do to fix it. What's one way you think this problem gets fixed?
Yeah, and I'll even add to it more than a 10-year-old problem. So in my former life, I was an attorney, and I can remember one of my professors when I was getting a master's in law talking about this very issue, and he was very involved in lobbying and government services. And he at the time had said, hey, if we got the right people in Washington in the room, we can actually fix Social Security in an hour, because it's not like Medicare issue, which is much harder. Remind everyone that was in 2009. We're 13 years down the road. Every single year that we continue to wait on this problem, it becomes less easier to fix. But the number one way that you do it, again, I mean, I'm a math person and a numbers guy, is an increase in taxes. No one wants to hear that, but that's the most likely way that it probably happens. So one thing that I foresee likely happening is that higher earners could pay more on more of their income. Right now, only a portion of someone's income is subject to Social Security taxes. It increases with inflation every year, and I think this year it's 168,000. So if someone makes 200,000, the first 168,000 of their dollars are subject to that 6.2% tax that Neil referenced, and anything over that is not subject to it. So that is one thing that has been thrown out, is like, hey, eliminate that cap, and that would go a long way in terms of fixing the funding issue. Part of the problem with that, though, is if you do that, like, you have to at least allow someone, if they're making more than that, to get some sort of a benefit on that higher amount, which right now they're not getting a benefit on that, which makes sense because they're not paying. And we'll discuss this a little bit later. There are reasons for that based on how the system the program is run. Another thing that he could do is higher tax rates on all benefits, as Neil talked about. Right now, we're at about 6.2%, and then the employer pays 6.2%. So math goes to 12.4 total of those wages to Social Security. So increasing that number could also help reduce that shortfall. So those are two things that, frankly, I think you're going to see both of those at some point enacted. What the numbers actually will be, and maybe another increase in retirement age is another possible way that you could see kind of a change to fix this thing, so that we don't have that 20% benefit cut. But at the end of the day, you're going to have a couple levers to be pulled to fix this, and the sooner that it gets done, the easier it is. As far as I'm concerned, I like to use the analogy as like a big ocean liner, like a big tank. Like, you have to start turning those babies pretty early, right? You can't just decide at the last minute, hey, we're going to make a hard right turn. They weigh, a couple million pounds probably. So the earlier we can start to turn this thing, the less draconian some of these changes have to be. So if we said, hey, raise it up to 250,000 in wages, which that seems to be, for some reason, a number that the government always has in mind when they talk about high income earners, is 250,000. I don't know why. And then maybe make it 6.5 or 7. That probably will be enough to fix it if you did it right now. If you wait until 2030, that's probably not going to be enough. To have to be something more draconian, which is as little faith as I have in politicians in Washington, who typically like to get elected. And Social Security is one of those topics that if they can't get together on this, I'm going to lose a little bit of faith on them being able to get together in anything, because this will cause people to lose some jobs.
Yeah, and I agree. It's like the Titanic getting ready to hit the iceberg. They just didn't see it in time and couldn't move out of the way, if we all remember that movie from the 90s there. The other thing that I think is going to be considered, at least, and it's probably a little more controversial, is increasing the full retirement age for folks. Right now, it's 67 years old. I've seen things that they could raise it as high as 69 or even 70. And what that does is, if you retire prior to that, there's a big discount involved. And if you're setting that retirement age at 69 and those people retire at 62, that discount is even more significant. So that's going to bother some people, but people are living longer and their life expectancies have extended since the time this system was created. I mean, back in the 1930s, the life expectancy was basically 65 years old, and now it's well into our 80s. So people are living longer and putting more strain on the benefit system, and pushing that full retirement age out is something that they're going to talk about, but it's not going to be something that people are really in favor of in that. Vince, what about something like benefit cuts or means testing of benefits?
Again, I think the longer we wait, the more likely you see that. It comes into getting elected, and to me, a sense of fairness. Like, even if we go back to when Social Security was enacted again, it was really because you had the Depression, and we had a problem of it's not good for society to have a lot of older folks be destitute, right, and have no means at all. Like, that looks bad as a society, and in fact, it's bad for capitalism in and of itself. I used to say this all the time. It's kind of weird, but like Franklin D. Roosevelt, I could make an argument that he's basically the greatest capitalist in history, because he saved a lot of things when some people would say he's a socialist. So it's to call it kind of funny when you get into how these things work over a long time period, and how programs that were kind of started and what they were meant to do, and then what they've become. I don't think anybody had it planned at that time that this would be such a huge part of all of Americans' retirement, because the whole concept of retirement and the things that I talk about on a daily basis didn't really exist for a lot of people in the 1930s, as Neil referenced their supposed life expectancy. So I think the longer we wait, the more kind of draconian these cuts would be, and some of the stuff like means testing of benefits. If you start seeing that, I mean, I think that would be fairly draconian because again, the way the system's set up, there's kind of already a means testing component to it just because of the structure of it. So if you add another means testing of it, it kind of defeats the purpose of the program. And I think politically it's going to become more of a hot button topic, and it could be easier for someone to come in and decide to take it away, which I personally think would be pretty bad because overall it has problems, but it's probably the most successful government program in the history of the world, in my opinion. Doesn't mean that it doesn't have issues, but still it's survived as long as it has, and a lot of people rely on it. But that means testing thing could be something they do. Again, the way that the structure is now, though, your replacement cost of someone making 30,000 versus someone making 100,000, Social Security replaces way more of the 30,000 person income than the 100,000 person. So if you add another means testing level to it, I think that would probably kind of be a little bit unfair and not the best way to do it. But again, if they keep waiting, that may be one of the more draconian fixes that we have to do to make the numbers work. Another fix could be look at some other resources, so not just income, but look at resources to determine if there's enough assets or other income streams that you may see your benefits reduced. Again, if they do that, I think that's going to be long term. If I put my hat on where I'm trying to predict things, I think that's going to cause problems for the program because the more that you tend to separate it as like social insurance for everyone, when you start to do more means testing than you already are, I think that's potentially going to cause another problem from the sustainability of it from a political perspective longer term. So those are two things that I hope don't happen. I don't think that they need to, but again, if we're going to mess around, and I think if you see it get to the 2029, 2030, if we can get past the next 4-year cycle of a president in there and they haven't done anything, even if the economy is good, then you're going to have to see some draconian cuts and there's going to be some issues. So I'm hoping no matter what happens after this election, I'm crossing my fingers here and being an optimist that we can actually have some rational discussions on this during this election season. And then no matter who wins, at some point, this is one of the top 2 or 3 priorities that I think need to happen in the next administration is, hey, let's get together and let's fix this so we can get through this donut hole, so to speak, and not have that 20% cut, because that's going to be very bad if it actually happens.
Yeah, and to kind of give you some example and some ideas of what the current system is set up, there's the math behind Social Security, although it's really complex. There's a certain amount of adjusted indexed monthly earnings, is the technical term, that are 80, you get a benefit based on 85% of that. And then there's another level where it's about 35%. And then over a certain amount up to the maximum, it's 15% of that benefit that comes into play. And what happens there is if you extend that, the incremental benefit for higher incomes is not all that great because of that 15% level that they're replacing those incomes to determine your primary insurance amount. And if they remove the cap on earnings, then it without doing the same to the benefit, it's going to not have as much of an impact for higher earners, but it would also be a problem for those people who are near that level, and they would be somewhat resistant, I would think. There's some other proposals out there that don't necessarily fix the problem Social Security faces. In fact, it can actually make them worse. And if we looked at these in isolation, but there's things that are being floated for political support more than anything. And you'll hear people talking about increasing the minimum benefit, changing how the cost of living adjustment is computed, and even increasing benefits for people over the age of 80. All of these by themselves would put even more stress on on Social Security's current situation. But I think if any of this gets done, it will be done in conjunction with an increase in taxes or an increase in revenue. And that's just a few of the examples of things you're going to hear about as we get into the election season later on. Vince, this is going to be a hot topic for both sides, and it's going to create a lot of entertainment, for lack of a better term. All right, good stuff today. If you liked what you saw, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you'd like to learn more about our company, Commonwealth Financial Services, we are the Ohio Valley's financial planning firm. You can find us on the web, cfswv.com. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.